How often have you proclaimed that you were sleepy only to lay down and find that you were unable to fall asleep? So you have to ask yourself, were you really sleepy or were you just experiencing fatigue instead? On today's episode, we'll talk about ways to tell the two apart and reasons why it's an important distinction. I'm Jay, and this is Somnilopod. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad that you joined me. I wanted to touch base with you all today on the distinction between sleepy and fatigued. This is something that I have been doing some research on myself recently. And if you have ever Googled or put into a search, a website search, the question, why am I so tired? You will find a bazillion responses. And it's easy to go down a rabbit hole when you're looking at these things simply because there can be so much involved. So I wanted to try to just look at the difference between these two, sleepy and tired. We have all experienced sleepiness in our lives, and it's a very familiar feeling for us. You know, your eyes are drooping, your head is nodding, you feel like you can go to sleep very quickly. And that is one of the things that does help distinguish between the two. Given the opportunity to go to sleep, do you fall asleep quickly? And after you have slept for a little bit, when you wake up, do you still feel sleepy? Patients with sleepiness often report that once they have had a little bit of sleep, they really don't feel as sleepy as they did previously. Things like a short nap, 20 to 30 minutes, may help relieve some of those feelings of sleepiness. Now, there are several different ways that we can measure sleepiness. There is a pen and paper test called the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. I have a link to that on the website in the resources page. But it is a pen and pencil or pen and paper test that we have used in the clinical setting for years to help patients sort of determine their level of daytime sleepiness. And it's a very effective test for us. There is also a specific test that we can do in the Sleep Disorder Center called a multiple sleep latency test. It is a test that is performed during the day on patients, and patients are given the opportunity to go to sleep several times throughout the day. And what we look at, what we measure, is when they're given the opportunity to go to sleep, if they do fall asleep, how quickly asleep they go, and in some cases, how deeply asleep they go. So we look at that over a number of different testing opportunities throughout the day to determine if indeed they did have a high level of specific sleepiness that we could measure, or if they didn't fall within certain ranges, say, for example, if given the opportunity to sleep, they just didn't go to sleep, then they may be confusing their sleepiness with fatigue. So it's an important distinction for us to be able to make in a clinical setting. Now, fatigue is a much trickier subject, and it's much more difficult for medical professionals and healthcare professionals to get a handle on fatigue because it can be so nebulous. Now, we have all experienced fatigue as well, and in general, fatigue is that feeling of just being drained, of muscle weakness. You feel like somebody has just sort of the analogy that I always come up with is, when you pull the drain on a sink full of water, and the water just sort of swirls down the drain. It feels like that's what's happening to your energy level. So people do report often that they have low energy, low motivation, but also they can report things like nervousness and anxiety, irritability, just a general malaise, just a discomfort or an unease. Often there are physical issues with fatigue, body stiffness, soreness, just feeling tired. that lack of energy in your muscles to be able to get up and go or get out of bed or lift a box or whatever it is you need to do. There are ways as well to measure fatigue. It's very similar to some of the ways that we measure sleepiness. There is just a pen and paper scale that can be used. I've got a link to that on the website as well. It is just a fatigue assessment scale, so you can have a look at that as well. But there are also tests called a psychomotor vigilance task that can be used to sort of assess fatigue. This one's a little bit different. It's not something that would be as involved as the multiple sleep latency test that we perform in the lab. In fact, there are apps that you can use to determine your psychomotor vigilance. And it's basically just it's a very quick measurement on your attention. So you're given the opportunity to look at something, and as it starts to activate, they're measuring your response time to sort of touch on the iPad, for example, or touch on your phone screen to see how quickly you respond to certain things. And they can tell just from how quickly that happens a general level of your fatigue or your vigilance based on that. So why is it important to tell the difference between the two? Well, often the difference can mean a different treatment regime or a different way to be treating or a different cause for the feelings that you're having. So for example, with sleepiness, if a patient goes to the doctor and they report that they're sleepy, we're probably going to be looking at a couple of different things. Basically, is sleep deprivation involved? Are you getting enough sleep? Is there something happening to your sleep, the sleep that you're getting, that could be leading to this daytime sleepiness? So those are some avenues of investigation that your doctor may take with just reported sleepiness. But with fatigue, there can be so many different contributing factors to that's going to be something that your physician will have to investigate a little bit further. Now, when is it important to actually talk to your doctor about this? Because we all have periods of sleepiness. We all have periods of fatigue. One of the things that you want to pay attention to is if it is a very sudden onset. Is it something that has occurred quickly and is lasting for longer than a few days? You know, for example, if you've had a heavy workload at work, you've had a high level of stress, you may feel fatigue for a couple of days, but usually if you're given the opportunity to sort of de-stress and relax and sort of recoup some of your energy, those symptoms will disappear or will dissipate or lessen over time. But if they don't, then it may be something that your physician will need to investigate a little more in depth. Also, you want to look at things. Are you losing weight? Have you lost weight quickly? Are you short of breath? Do you have chest pains? Do you have is your heartbeat irregular? Are you having any sort of specific muscle weakness or vomiting, abdominal pain, things like that? Other symptoms that may indicate that there is something else contributing to the fatigue, a little bit more than just simply a sleep disorder. Now, that is not to say that fatigue doesn't also play a part in sleep disorders because, as I mentioned, it's sometimes very difficult to tell the two apart. However, as I mentioned, with sleep disorders, they can typically be treated fairly quickly, and the sleepiness portion will resolve as well as the fatigue. In some cases, it doesn't, and that may require some additional investigation. But for the most part, once you start to take care of the sleepiness, the fatigue will resolve as well. I hope this has been informative for you. I mentioned mentioned a rabbit hole earlier when I was doing my research. There's a lot of things that can contribute to fatigue, and I'm like, okay, I felt like a first-year psychology student, self-diagnosing myself with everything that I came across, but. It has been interesting and fun to be able to put this information together for you. If you feel like you're experiencing some excessive daytime sleepiness or fatigue, go ahead and, like I say, check out the resource page on the website, somnilopod.com. Take those tests for yourself. If you have questions about it, don't hesitate to reach out to me, jay@somnilopod.com. You can also touch base with me on any of the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. You can also reach out to me through the YouTube channel. So until we meet again, please remember to try to make sleep a priority. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.